coming up in this episode.
I hear a lot of organizations say they're so customer centric, and then I start speaking to their CS team and they're absolutely effing not. Like they're lying to themselves because it sounds good. Or maybe they are so disconnected they think they're customer centric, but then it's like you haven't spoken to your client in 6 months time and you haven't asked them how they're, you know what I mean? Like,
you know, if you go to the majority of the countries outside of the UK, you know, Europe, America, which is the majority of the world, by the way. The problems that we talk about are not the problems that they talk about.
Totally.
It's like fucking perspective, man.
Help them understand what success looks like. So ask the right question, meaning, hey, if I wanted to keep 50% of your customers for 3 years, what do you think we should do? And then take a look at the life cycle and make sure that the language and the value you're using is consistent.
The Founders Unplugged podcast, hosted by Greg McCallum. Raw, unedited conversations with entrepreneurs and startup founders.
What?
There we go.
There we go.
So we're gonna.
That was great timing.
Thanks to my allergies. Shout out to them. My allergy pill hasn't kicked in yet today, so here we are.
Oh, fun time. What sort of beautiful allergies have you got?
Well, I don't mean to brag about this, but I got the all-time high score at my allergist when we did skin testing. So I'm allergic to basically the entire outdoors: grasses, pollens, molds, dogs, cats, horses, birds, you name it.
Right.
So
you hit the jackpot. So you're just basically allergic to life.
Yes, I'm allergic to really anything. I should be in a bubble and I'm not. So honestly, Darwin would be so pissed that I'm still alive.
He might be fascinated, you know.
I think he'd be like, she is against my whole theory here. So
yeah, just check it all out. Like survival of the fittest. What? How did you get here?
This ain't it. This girl is not the fittest.
Oh dear. Well, that's something. At least you've got some accomplishment you can brag about there. So that's good.
Yeah, you really. I don't normally share the allergy flex, but here we go.
Hey, look, sometimes you've just got to put it out there and show off your accomplishments. Be proud. But look, it's great to see you again, and very excited to talk to you about all sorts of things. And as you can probably gather, this is kind of the vibe of the conversation we got going on here today. So I hope you're ready for a bit of a journey. And as I pointed out, there isn't a huge amount of structure today, but there is one piece of structure that I try and insist on at the beginning to, you know, give listeners and viewers some sort of what's the word, something to hold on to, I guess, and that is to ask my guests to introduce themselves and you know, however much you want or little you want, and tell people what you're doing, what you're up to, a bit about the business. So I pass the buck on to my guests to do that job for me.
Well, thank you very much. And what I'll say is, in my interviewing of customer success folks over the years, every time I asked that question, I would not hire them if their answer was more than a minute. So you might get a briefer summary than other folks because of how I punish people for telling me too much.
Well, you know, this is a podcast, so you can go on for as long as you like.
Do you want me to? I could filibuster as well, but no.
Exactly.
I am Erin Stavi. I run a customer success consulting business now, and professionally, I was in customer success my whole career, even before it was called customer success. So, graduated college right after the 2008 economic crisis, and that is my LinkedIn Indeed. And I was desperate for a job. I had to pay for my undergrad, and I was really stressed. So I had started going to the recruiting fair for years in advance. I'm not going to spend this much detail, but I think it's interesting because basically I fell into my career and I knew I needed a job. I worked for years to build connections at the career fairs, and that's the only way I got my job. So 1 year after I graduated, there was a survey and it went out, and only 30% of kids in my graduating class had a job one entire year after graduation. Wow. So I was just happy to have something, right?
Yeah.
I went to Battle Creek, Michigan. If you haven't been there, it is where Kellogg World headquarters is. And so I pulled data. I worked for Nielsen. I pulled data. I knew everything about cereal and Pop-Tarts that you could possibly imagine. I spent 2 years of my life living in it. And then I transferred through Nielsen. which does data analytics, not just TV measurement stuff. We then I worked at Miller Coors in Chicago, and I did the same thing, but I got to be in the craft beer division. And that's when craft beers were starting to blossom in the US. I got to see this whole market come up, and I love dad jokes and bad puns. So I started writing thought leadership on behalf of Nielsen. And I still have an article on the thought leadership website that was IPAs are creating a brouhaha, but BREW. And so that's my brand in short. Anywho.
Yeah. You knew the target market you were going for there, didn't you?
Yeah. I was just, you know what, sometimes, because the job could be boring. So it's like, I had to bring in my own humor to keep my mind sharp with it. And then I did what any normal person in corporate America would do. And I moved to Tel Aviv, Israel, took a leave of absence from Nielsen, and started working in startup culture, where I went from wearing, blouses and blazers to people coming in the office in pajamas and sandals, and all this stuff. And I was like, what is this weird world? But they were so smart. So then I worked as an individual contributor, another account manager at this Series A startup. And what they were doing was really cool. They used military, basically data science techniques to bring together big data. It was like all of the buzzwords at the time. Long story short, they actually could show major companies huge innovation opportunities. So the biggest case study was one I worked on. We were hired by a skincare company, and we unearthed that hyaluronic acid was going to be the main ingredient in skincare before anyone else did. They actually already used it. It wasn't a brand new ingredient. People had used it, but they just didn't market it. And so they changed their packaging, became the #1 SKU in Sephora. That was our first. It was a small brand that had just been acquired by Estee Lauder. And then we went into Estee Lauder and grew it, the contract size huge. From there, I started hiring and managing people across the UK and the US, built out the customer success program for the consumer packaged goods and food and beverage section of the Series A company. And then after 4 years there, and a brief gap year doing marketing, which was so fun, I decided to move to something else. And I went to a marketing tech company that was about 80 million in ARR at the time. They didn't trust me because I had never worked in e-com. I was like, hi, what's a conversion? And they're like, oh my God, why do we hire this girl? But their renewal rates were like in the 60s at the time. And they gave me 4 people, and we got 100% our entire first year. So we measured it each half, we got 100% renewal rates. So then they started promoting me. And in my time, I wound up overseeing about 60 people, one inclusive of one acquisition that we made, and drove up the renewal rates, hit all of our metrics, kept all my talent, was able to grow my team, and they are incredibly strong at customer success. Phenomenal people. So that was really fun, dug into the business, learned a lot about business from that final 4 years at the marketing tech company, Series C. And then I started teaching through Sales Impact Academy. I started teaching customer success. Former colleague of mine was like, hey, I'm getting married. I teach this class on the side. Do you want to try it? I was like, sure. Funny thing is, my family's all teachers, and I'm not a patient person. So I always was like, I'm never going to teach. And now I'm teaching customer success. So here I go. And that changed my perspective, because I was investing so deeply in one company, and so much of my discipline and what I knew and learned over my years, other people didn't have that knowledge, that I was like, sheesh, there's a pretty big opportunity out here.
It's valuable. Yeah.
It's so valuable. And it's something that's just core to my soul at this point. It's innate to me, right? So I started thinking about that. And then in January, I decided to, there were layoffs and tech world's on fire, and it gives everyone time to reflect. And I was like, okay, I think I want to just start working with earlier stage startups, thinking back to that Series A I worked with, because so many of the decisions they made at that time ultimately paved a way to whether they would be successful in customer success 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So why don't I start working with founders? Why don't I see if this is monetizable and go from there? And so I built my business. I made up my former income in 3 months' time, and here we go. We're scaling.
Fantastic. 3 months.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well, I think I'm going to get into something that founders, I'm not fundraising, so I can say this. I think I was relatively lucky, but also there is a market opportunity. So for me, what's happening in the market is, because investors realize finally that pipelines are difficult and it's going to be a lot harder to get new business, they're finally doubling down on the importance of retaining the existing business and growing that base. So it's a belief I am biased, but I've always had. And it's refreshing to see, okay, now investors are thinking this, which means more founders are like, I have to get my customer success in order earlier. And very few people know how to do it. I would also say very few customer success consultants exist compared to like sales team consultants. And this is my hypothesis. I think that we are so paranoid by nature because our entire discipline is figuring out what could go wrong and getting in front of it, that is very difficult for customer success professionals to be like, I'm going to go out on my own and help companies retain their customers. So that's where we're at. Demand's high. I've always worked with C-suite people. So my network is at higher levels because at every single startup, inclusive of my first job, I was working with C-suite. And so I just have the right connections, and I consider myself a relatively good human. So, people want to work with good people.
And you're not intimidated by those individuals, because a lot of people out there want to start their own sort of service-led business or consultancy, but they're just terrified of approaching, people in C-suite and being like, hey, would you like to pay me to do this? And that's like, that's a huge blocker, isn't it?
Yeah. And to me, because I was on the executive team at my last company, people are just people. Yeah. I would say the only people I'm intimidated by are phenomenal chefs, because I always say my ultimate goal is to be on Great British Bake Off. So like if Hollywood were to walk into my house, I would have an asthma attack and not be able to okay.
I used to be a chef. You're intimidated by me now.
Oh no. I want to steal the whole interview and ask you every single thing about you being a chef. No.
I used to be a long time ago, in another life. It was my first career. I actually moved to France for a couple of years and trained in France. Yeah, I'm the home cook now. It was what I wanted to do, and then I got disillusioned with it because it's just a fucking nightmare.
So that's so I'm debilitatingly competitive, which many chefs are, and I thought about going to be an apprentice when I was 14, and there was a pretty good culinary school where I grew up, and so I thought about it. But for me, I've been cooking since I was 7. It is now, especially as I've gone through some toxic work experiences, blah, 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 it's really my outlet and my safe space.
Exactly.
And my fear was like, if this turns into my job, I give 90% of my life force and a whole lot of intensity to my job. So anywho, once I'm able to retire and be financially secure, then I'll do something in food. But yeah, I'm just preserving it as my happy place. But we will be talking about food later on in this podcast, because now I know enough to be dangerous about you.
Good. It's just like anything. If you start turning, they always say, if you can turn a career around something that you love, then you'll never feel like you're working a day in your life. That's bullshit. Like, I don't believe that at all. Like, there are certain things in life that are sacred, that are for you. And if you love them, keep them for you, because as soon as you put work around them, there are things about them you will not love. And that was what it was like with food. That's what it's like with art for me as well. A number of other things. And so for me, I keep them to myself. They're hobbies.
So I'm not an art girl, but what you touched on just made me laugh, because I used to have, there was this sales guy, his name was Shlomi, and he was at my Series A company, and
Good name.
Gentle. Yeah, he's awesome man. And we went to a WeWork to see a client at one point, and on the WeWork TV, it was like, do what you love. And the client wasn't in the office yet. And he just looks at me and he goes, I fucking hate coming here. And he goes, do you think I'm doing what I love? No, I'm obviously not doing what I love. Like, I have kids. I want to chill with my kids. This makes me feel terrible. And I'm like crying, laughing as the client is coming in. And he's just like looking at me like, obviously we're not going to continue this conversation in front of the client. But I'm like, oh, Shlomi. So every time I see do what you love, I think of Shlomi, because he made my day. What I will say though, I am going to challenge you, because there are aspects of every single job I've loved. Like, I served soft serve ice cream for 6 years. I loved doing that. I loved making coffee. This is obviously in my youth when I was in high school and all that. And in every single job, I've loved different challenges of it. So when I'm pulling data, right, you can't get much more boring than either inputting or pulling data, in my opinion. But when I could craft a story and I could help people see something that they didn't see before. I liked that. Now what I'll say is I definitely like this job the most because I love business and I love figuring out where are the disconnects, where are the silos, where's the smoking gun that's keeping this business from being where they're at to going to that next chapter.
Yeah, and I can totally agree with that. I have the same thing with what I do as a consultant, right? Which is it's like you're an investigator. It's like you're a detective. You're problem solving. You're trying to find things. You're looking at connections. There's something about it which is just, you know, it's so big, this big picture, and you know, having to go into the micro and view the macro at the same time. There's something that only a few people in the world, I think, and the people in the world, I think, that, you know, are capable of that, first of all, but also fall in love with that. I think what it is it's a love for problem solving
100%.
more than anything else. That's what it is.
Yep.
But I think, you know, going back to the food thing, though, that is like, that's a problem of balance. That's where there's more shit that you have to deal with rather than actually doing the thing that you love. It's it's like, you know, if you were doing what you're doing now and you end up having to do more and more admin, more and more finance, and it just means you're spending less and less time actually doing the problem solving, well, then guess what? Suddenly you're no longer enjoying your job, you know?
Well, and that's interesting. I mean, we can get into that because I will say where I'm at right now, I'm on the precipice of having to figure out how to scale and bring in people, and that's terrifying. But I do admin. It doesn't take up that much time. What takes up a lot of my time is networking, brand awareness, and pipeline.
Yeah.
And then
strategizing, like all of that sort of stuff. But the thing is, though, that's still problem solving.
That's true.
So that's still, I suppose that's still that, because for me, I know that's why I still continue doing what I'm doing, because of most of it, actually, it's still fun. Because of, you know, as a commercial advisor, well, I just need to advise myself. You know, it's just like, what am I doing wrong? What can I do better? So, like, you know, I don't know. There's enough variety of stuff to keep it interesting, right? I think that's the key.
For sure. I need variety.
Whereas if you're told to cook a fucking flan every day, like 20 times a day, you're like, I'm quite sick of cooking flans. Like, I used to love this recipe and now I can't stand it. You know, and it's so that's a bit different. Like, it's repetitive. That's the problem with a lot of
I agree. And I actually get freaked out. It's funny. I get freaked out by all gelatin products. So the is like, it's a hard thing for me.
Yeah, have you got an allergy to that as well?
Yeah, that's not going to happen for me, period. But that's all to say. Yeah, getting back to sleuthing, I think I read a lot of Nancy Drew as a kid. And did you have Nancy Drew over there?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's familiar. I don't think I've ever read any. Okay,
well, they're phenomenal. And she is, the best part is there's 45 books and she's 18 throughout the whole series. So she had a big year. That's all to say. I just met with a new client, and in 10 hours, I told him, here are the key problems in your business, right? You did this in 10 hours. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of like a bulldog. Like I get straight to I cut through the bullshit pretty quickly.
Yeah.
One of my dreams, which I'm not going to do, but I could totally do due diligence for investors and just focus on customer success. Because like, if you figure out what's going on in customer success, you figure out all the other parts of the organization that are problematic. So that's something that I haven't seen any firms do, maybe because they don't want to know, honestly, at this point.
Maybe, I mean, yeah, or they just haven't thought of it. But look, let's take a step back for just one moment, because I'm deeply aware of the fact that I know this firsthand, that not many people actually fully understand what customer success is.
Yeah.
So would you mind defining it? What in your terms, what we think is? I know it's kind of like going a bit back to school, but I think that's quite important for people.
Thank you for asking and keeping me on track. That's important.
You're very welcome.
I would say, so customer success is the management of clients after they sign the contract. So anything post-sale is customer success. It's a lot of customer experience. Customer experience is also pre-sale, so it's not only customer experience, but it includes onboarding. It includes getting the client's time to value as quick as possible. It's basically fulfilling the promise, or as much of the promise as possible, that they were promised in sales. It's understanding their business. It's understanding how the product or service can continue to add value to their business and make their lives easier. It's re-articulating that with the right people at the right time. And then that should result in, normally, renewals and expansion. Now, who are having that conversation? It's not always one person, right? There might be an onboarding manager. There might be support. There might be all of these other areas, especially as businesses scale. But customer success is the art and science of defining value, often, at the very least, understanding value, delivering value, and then talking about value continuously so that you are controlling the narrative and resulting with the client continuing to work with you and expanding. Does that make sense?
Great explanation. Yeah, I often explain it somewhat similarly, but I kind of describe anyone who has any interaction with a customer as part of the customer success team, whether they have the customer success title or not. That's kind of it's an archaic, old school way of viewing things, that you need to have a customer success agent in order to fulfill customer success. Because as you rightly pointed out, it happens right from the moment of pre-sales. It happens from the moment of prospecting. Every value you propose, every interaction you have, and as I'm a huge advocate for this, and I'm on record of saying this many times. I think I even said this when we first spoke, that the problem, especially with a subscription model, which is the vast majority of SaaS and tech businesses these days, is you have to sell the product every month to someone.
100%.
So that's where the value is in customer success. If anyone ever questions where's the value in that, there's the value right there. Because people forget value of things, right? You need to remind them.
That's why it's like, and I use my language. I use a spectrum of soft touch to hard language, but it's like, if we're not battering people over the head with value, we will lose. Exactly. And one thing that people also get messed up on is, what is value? Because I hear all of these folks who are like, oh, if we just get usage up, we're going to get the renewal. I'm like, well, no. What? Like, what are they using it for? What's the business impact of their usage? What pain point are we removing, or what are we bringing to the table for them, right? These are all of the questions of value. And so value itself seems to be misunderstood, maybe because people get overwhelmed by it. And then also inconsistency of value. So I've worked in organizations, and I now consult organizations where value is presented in the sales cycle as one thing, and then the reality is completely different, or they don't even know what they're talking about in the sales cycle, so they make up their own value.
Yeah, there's a disconnect.
There's a disconnect, and it's fine, right? It happens. But how can we be as consistent as possible in that customer experience? Because if you're building a brand for yourself, a brand is built on consistency. So if you're saying you're one thing, then you need to figure out how to deliver that one thing and continue to re-articulate that one thing, right? It seems so simple, and almost no one does it, to be frank.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Or if they do it very, very poorly.
Yeah.
I think another key difference between something like customer success, because people, at least in the UK, I don't know about the States, but actually I think it's a few people I've spoken to in the States have had this issue too, quite often don't understand the difference between customer success and customer support. And my explanation, right, and my explanation for that, and I'm keen to know what your thoughts are on this, has always been that, the difference there is one is passive, one is active. Right, or proactive and not, whereas, because the worst kind of customer success is the type of success you only get when you seek it as a customer. It should be, you get a phone call and it's like, hey, I'm giving you a call to let you know we've done this and we've added this and I want to show you this. It's like, oh, fucking awesome, not a newsletter that just says we've released some new features, but like actually, let me show you, this is how you can do it. Yeah.
That also reflects, hey, I remember you were trying to do this. We just came out with this new thing, right? Like that type. So
you made a request for this feature like 6 months ago. Guess what we've just launched? Like, thank you for that suggestion, stuff like that. And that's where you need that holistic, built-in communication with product, with sales, with marketing, with everyone. Like, it all needs to be connected.
And that is another flavor of customer success to answer. So I've actually never heard the reactive versus proactive. I really like that. I will also say customer support is normally very tactical and technical. Yeah. And in my experience, customer success is more commercially and business savvy focused, related to the overall strategy, impact, and all of that. Yes, they still do tech enablement, but support to me is more of that tactical, almost like live FAQ answering type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Customer success, which is guiding the client through, how do we really deliver value? How do we show it? How do we gather all of those use cases and impact point social proof from your own team? And then how do we package that up really nicely for you and the figures that be?
Yeah, you don't call a customer success agent because you can't log in, right?
No, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. So I agree. And what you just touched on, so for me, ideally, customer success is that center of the org where we're not solely responsible for retaining the customers. We have the conversations. We're quarterbacking anyone else we need from the organization to help us retain the customers. But one big misconception I found with founders is like, well, customer success isn't doing their job if we have too high of churn. And it's like, well, are they communicating why we're losing the customers? Are they communicating what we need? Are we communicating all of the different opportunities? Then they're doing their job if they're advocating on behalf of their client and they're managing internal stakeholders in your company, right? Churn and retention are an organizationally wide effort, and they should, because it's a reflection of the work. That's all to say. I do agree. I think customer success should be in the middle. Funny enough, I was reading Amp It Up by Frank Slootman. Have you read it? I'm not.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I'm not a big business book reader. I learn on the streets. Okay, like I learn.
Yeah. I'm the same. I've read a few, but yeah.
Normally I glaze over, but I liked Amp It Up because Frank, who did Snowflake and like all of these big companies, very successful dude, he has some interesting leadership styles. I was devouring the book. I was like, okay, like I love the idea of all of the C-suite having the same metric, because when I've worked with C-suites and everyone has different metrics they're working against, they all become self-interested because they want their own cost and they want their own variable, and it can hold the company back. So like really interesting ideas. And then in like one sentence, he's like, customer success should not be its own department and it shouldn't exist. And I was like, oh God.
Oh dear.
Exactly. But his point was not that he doesn't believe in customer success. His point was that it is an organizationally wide effort. And the more you have stark handoffs, like from sales, they are going to be less apt to care or to think about, ooh, am I selling a customer that's going to renew 12 months from now?
Yeah.
And he was like, your commercial team should be one commercial, which isn't an answer. I don't know many AEs who would be willing to do both personally, because I think they're very different skill sets. That's all to say. It was an interesting read because I agreed with him. And then he had a very bold statement about my own craft. And I was like, well, I can see the thought behind it. I haven't seen it done well in that format, but happy to be proven wrong.
I can kind of see his point though, which is, the in some ways customer success, shouldn't be its own department. It should be a skill set, that is embedded across all commercial functions of a business. I can kind of see that. But I mean, that begs the question then, based on what you said, like what is the difference between a customer success agent and an account manager?
I actually think account managers are customer success. I was an account manager and I was doing customer success. I think
that's predominantly what you're doing, right? Especially if you're working only in the late stage of the pipeline, where you're just closing, for example. Like you're pretty much just about doing sales, when the sale's been pretty much done for you. If you're just coming in and closing it, especially if you've got other stakeholders on both ends facilitating the close, then ultimately, you're just picking up a bit. You're basically having a handover, and you're doing customer success, right?
And for me, my favorite format, and this is when I was an individual contributor, it was at my Series A. I would go with the account executives on the sales calls once they were in final stages. I was a subject matter expert.
That is my most favorite way of doing things as well. Yeah,
100%. Because also there's a lot of elements to it. One, human-wise, they already know you and trust you instead of a stark handoff. Because I always say when you have stark handoffs, it's like they're dating the salesperson and now they're married to the CS stranger. Like that's
a great way of putting it. Yeah.
It's just not fun and by the way, on our honeymoon, we tell them bad news always, right? Like immediately after getting married, we're like, hey, by the way, we can't do this thing.
Sorry, I've been cheating on you. Yeah. That's right.
Like, not a great start to a marriage. So
based
on one, you have trust, rapport, and some relationship building with the individuals. The other is you're already cemented and positioned as the expert in the room, because the AE is never going to know as much about, and they shouldn't, as much about the product as you. So you can start answering the questions, getting through objections before the sale, which is terrifying to some AEs. But in my experience, the more mature AEs are like, hey, I want to be able to keep selling and not get brought into a shitstorm later. So let's do this now. Great.
And if they're on like a rolling commission, they want to keep that person for 6, 12, 18 months. Like they want to see that commission keep coming in, right?
That's exactly right. And then finally, for me, you can really shorten the onboarding timelines and get them to come quicker if we were in that format. So that's all to say. That was my favorite way of doing things. And for me, account executives can stay in the relationship, especially for the larger organizations you're servicing, and they should, because what always happens is that customer success works with those points of contact and they can help with the tactical. And for me, I was gatekept so many times from like re-engaging with that senior stakeholder, I needed someone else from my org to be able to go in so that my wrist wouldn't get slapped for bypassing my points of contact. And that was another important piece, especially for those strategic size clients. How do I have someone else that can help me get through that org, make sure I have multi-threading available so that we're safeguarding ourselves and our value, right?
And it's really useful for when if you're ever presented with an upselling situation as well, where part of your success journey is to do that on a specific cadence or something, then sometimes you need that extra little weight to come in and help you with that, you know, especially to the larger clients. Yeah,
100%.
And I love that you said that though about this sort of the introduction piece, because you know, from like you pointed out, from a human perspective, it's so important to have the person that they've already built a rapport with and trust with to just be like, I vouch for this person. That's basically what it is. It's like, I'm handing you over to this person. They are shit hot, like bigging them up, you know, like this person's going to take care of you. This person knows more than, if you're happy with me, you're going to be way happier with this person because they know more than I do. I learn from them. Like, and you're just like feeling bigged up. And like you said, you can make a start on some stuff and tackle some problems head on early on. And yeah, smooth sailing from there. I always used to say to my sales team and the CS team in places I've worked in the past, that when your number comes up on your client's phone, because it should be saved, because that's the first thing you should ask them to do. They should be excited about answering the phone, like an old friend, you know. That's how it should feel, you know. And if you're not doing that, then you're not doing it right.
And I love that. So what you're speaking to in corporate speak is that trusted advisor relationship. But at the end of the day, my first renewal, so when I went to the Series A company, they were an agency and they were switching over to a product SaaS situation because the valuation would be higher.
Right.
Not the most productized thing I've ever seen, but that's fine. And so we were changing to renewals instead of just net new contracts. And the way I secured our first renewal ever for that company was because the person liked me. I swear, it was an emotional decision. I was a good human. And that engagement was a trash fire. They paid me, well, they paid us, I think like $80,000. And I worked as hard as I possibly could, super communicative, always followed up, built trust, whatever. And literally our deliverable was me saying, hey, we can't deliver what we said we would. I swear. And they said, okay, well, we're going to renew and pay you an additional $100K to do X, Y, and Z so that we actually can get that thing. That was my first renewal. And it's like, I think a lot of people overlook the importance of people wanting to work with good humans that they know they can trust and will advocate for them. And the other piece is I always showed curiosity with my clients and asking them about their life and who they are and what the job's like and what's their organization.
Building rapport. That's what that is, right? It's just being human, having a conversation. Like, it
is, but so many people are so afraid to look dumb at not understanding what someone says that they don't do that. And so the lack of, I always am asked, like, what's a skill that most CSMs lack or don't practice? And I always say discovery.
Right.
It's always discovery. And because it can be uncomfortable because maybe you don't know what to ask next, or you don't really understand what they're saying and you don't want to look stupid, right? You have all these weird narratives going on in your head, but if you're just like, oh, tell me more, they'll tell you more and you'll probably be able to figure out what they said, you know, and what they meant. So
also a big part of that, one of the keys to active listening is to stop talking, right? That's some of the best advice I've given people when they've listened to their calls or whatever. It's just like, just pause. Just pause a bit longer, allow people to breathe, and they'll fill the silence. Right now, you're filling it. Let them fill it, you know.
I was just looking at a new client's Gong calls. I love Gong. And I opened up one of they're an L&D platform and they have learners. They have 3 different types of kickoffs. We're going to change that. One of them are for learners. So it's the first time anyone going through the program has ever experienced the brand. And I opened the Gong call and my client spoke for 92% of the time.
Oh, fucking hell.
Like, well, I know what my first recommendation is.
Yeah.
And they're like, no one's enrolling. I'm like, yeah, because they're so effing bored. And they probably muted you and are doing their own shit, right, during these kickoffs. So they don't even know how to enroll because, like, they're crying inside.
Yeah.
I said it slightly nicer than that, but not much nicer than that.
Yeah. I think I mentioned before, I do pro bono sessions for early stage startups and entrepreneurs and stuff, like for an hour. And people are like, oh, do we really now? I'm like, yeah, because I'm going to be listening for 45 minutes. And then I'm going to give advice for 15. That's the way it should be, right?
Yeah. I do think so too. And the guided questions, right? Getting them to start thinking in a certain direction. For me, I normally employ coaching styles just with any founder because I want them to get to their own conclusion through the guided thinking. And I find that to be even more valuable because then frankly, I don't have to do as much persuasion. So it saves me work on the back end. But that's been really effective in terms of questioning and then just letting them speak. I agree. I always go for, so now our goal, I'm redesigning that kickoff. I'm like, our goal is to go from the customers speaking for 8% of the time to like 60% of the time. And right, the eyes that big of the operator I'm working with. And I'm like, it's very doable. Let's look at each slide. What's something you could ask? What's something we could bring in? How do we engage these people so they actually give a shit about what you're saying? And I think we're going to get there. I'm pretty positive we're going to get there, but just engaging, being human, like no one, we kind of get so caught up, we being CSMs or in general, I think people who service customers, we get so caught up with our objectives. Our objective, okay, I have to run through every single feature of this platform and I have to remind them like what the brand is and I have to make sure they are able to do X, Y, and Z all on this one call. It's like, first of all, too many objectives for one call. Secondly, would you want to watch this shit? You know, or do you want to get 5 emails a day? I don't. So why would we design a program that does that? It's just being able to remove from the weeds and from all of the objectives you think are supposed to happen to like what we actually think would be beneficial for the client and provide value.
Less is more, right? But the thing is, it's also not just the individual contributors' fault. I mean, they quite often told this from the top, you know, like you've got this to do and you don't forget to mention this and we've got to make sure that they understand this value and what we do. And, you know, they're being told from left and right, like, you know, all these different things that they're meant to cram into a call. But the problem is quite often they're not given autonomy to just go, right, just choose what you think will work. You know, it's like, here's the checklist of shit you've got to do. And we expect you to do it. And the quicker you do it, then the quicker we'll get lock-in. And, you know, and it's like, you know,
or they don't have the oversight of leadership. So they're just out there trying their best. You know, it's either or for sure.
Throwing at the whatever the wall and seeing what sticks kind of thing.
Or they Googled like, what am I supposed to do in a kickoff?
And that's the worst thing to do. That's like trying to Google a medical condition. You're just being like, oh fuck, I'm gonna die.
This is it. Google has informed me that I'm about to perish multiple times. So you're right. Again,
just when looking for the nearest chip shop, and then it'll just tell you you're gonna die. But it's a very, I mean, like I said, when we first met, I'm very passionate about this topic of customer success. I mean, a huge believer that, you know, really sales people need to move more into the mindset of even, you know, really early on in the pipeline of adopting this mindset. But like you said, it's just not executed that well in many places. Like my entire commercial strategy for multiple clients that I work with and for my own business is customer success focused. It has to be.
Thank you. And it's refreshing to hear because sometimes, to be transparent, I don't know if I'm just biased because this is my career.
Right.
But it would make sense to me that if you service your customers well, anyone who ever took Marketing 101 or any marketing class knows that word of mouth is the most effective way to build and maintain a business. So if you can service those customers and take care of them, and as best as you can, either deliver on the promise or tell them how you're working really hard to deliver on the promise, that's okay too. Then they're probably going to tell other people. Good clients bring in good clients. They multiply. They also have better expectations. So their time to value is lower. And in my experience, they have fewer pushback, right? Because they've all back channeled and been like, hey, this probably is not going to be the most fun. Here's what to look out for. Here's what I recommend, right? That to me just makes sense. And we know that it's lower cost to retain and build existing customers. So I like margins. I like business. I like profit. That to me makes sense too, right? Like you are building a long-standing business. And if you focus on really learning that customer and their pain points and expanding the rest of your product or services around how do you continue to get sticky or how do you work with their peer in the department right next to them, that to me is how you build a really shit hot brand, right? But people just get lost in that. And what I'm finding, especially as now I work with more founders, is like if they're from a product background, they're just so excited about building more features in the product that they forget to talk to clients and say like, does this even matter? Because they're like, ooh, look at this cool shit I just put together. Or if they're like, I just want to close as many logos as possible to show that I'm continuing to double our logos every 6 months or something, then it's like, okay, well, are you losing them though? Like, are they meaningful logos? Are they actually, do they actually fit, or do they get value, or do we need to focus on that? So it's interesting to see with founders, and I do work with C-suite, you know, who weren't the founding members, but I often work with founders as well. I love to see how their background kind of by osmosis and in general dictates what the approach is. And it's very rare to have a customer-centric organization unless the founder was the key persona. That's my favorite to work with because they speak the language, they know the pain points. Anything they speak to with customers is actually something they deliver against because they're not going to lie to themselves. That to me is like piece of cake. If I was running a VC firm, I would only invest in founders that actually lived the life of their key persona.
That's interesting. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, as you can imagine, like thought experimenting and all that. And I've got a bit of a theory as to why we ended up where we are and why this is so uncommon, right? And I think there's a number of factors. The first is the subscription model for purchasing products is relatively new, right? The second is because of that, even when it came about, it's being implemented with the mindset of selling just any other product, right? Oh, hello.
This is cool. She's been back to this model, so.
Hello. And so because of that, there's these old commercial strategies being implemented on something new. And people are buying, like we talked about, people have to buy it every month, right? So they're actually purchasing in a different way than ever before. Then you're not just purchasing once, they take it home and it's theirs. They're purchasing the other. So the entire business model has been put on that. Along with that is the investment thesis, you know, the investment practices, which are focused purely on growth and not looking too much at churn. Especially early on, because it's just about growth. It's about what markets can you penetrate and all that sort of thing. So all the incentive is just put on the beginning. It's not put on the end of the journey.
That's right.
And it's only more recently when we're seeing the bubbles bursting that they're like, oh shit, wait a minute. and the final piece of the puzzle as well, I'll add, is something you just pointed out there a little bit, which is the vast majority of personality types that go into being founders generally either have a technical background or a sales heavy background, generally one of the two. I don't think I've ever really met a founder that was like, oh, I was a CS agent for 20 years and I decided to start my own business. Like, you know, we were one of the few. You know, it's rare. So they don't have that unique viewpoint, a vantage point going into a business. So that's my theory. It's kind of a mixture of these things come together, but now it's becoming more of an area of focus.
I'm totally with you. And I will say, I hear a lot of organizations say they're so customer centric. And then I start speaking to their CS team and they're absolutely effing not. Like they're lying to themselves because it sounds good. Or maybe they are so disconnected. They think they're customer centric, but then it's like, you haven't spoken to your client in 6 months time and you haven't asked them how they're, you know what I mean? Like,
If you are enjoying this episode, please subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments.
It's just
delusional.
It is delusional, and it's not to pass judgment because I've been in leadership. It is very difficult. You're always running in 1 million different directions, and I really empathize for that. But for me, the language you use is also conditioning your teams. And so if you're saying you're a customer-centric organization and your customer success team gets no investment, no guidance, and they're just scrambling constantly to service the customers, and they're falling back to being reactive instead of proactive, you're not customer-centric. And no matter, and I know a lot of phenomenal CS leads that unfortunately just can't by themselves change the entire culture of an org. And that's really,
and also, I agree. And also, I think SaaS business models, financial models are broken fundamentally because what they fail to recognize is that, a lot of executives will tend to look at the CS team as a cost that doesn't make sense because it's like, well, they're not. I want to get more salespeople. I don't want to be adding more CS agents. They're not bringing any more new business in. And of course, that's a fundamental misunderstanding, right? They are bringing in business every month. They're bringing the same business every month, right? So they are reselling every month, like we just talked about. So the actual business, the financial model itself is fundamentally flawed because that isn't baked into that as an understanding, let alone upsells. And a really, really important one, which I believe will actually make salespeople pretty much redundant in the next 10 years, is referrals. That's a huge misunderstanding about, right. And if you can incentivize your CS team to do that and build a proper structure in place for it, they can generate more business than your sales team.
So that goes back to when I was saying word of mouth, and they bring in better customers. So at my last W2 job, we had a goal in my final year, and it was to get 40% of our business from referrals. And well, we didn't get to 40 because that would be outrageous, to be honest. We were, I think it was over a quarter. And it was over a quarter of our customers. We're bringing in more customers, right? Easiest sale ever. You're welcome, sales team. And again, better expectations, easier to service mostly. It's the whole vibe. And so if we think about how do you build an effective organization and a brand that's built for the ages, it's by being almost, I would say, maniacal and incredibly focused on what is value, how can we continue doing it, and then how can we ensure that those folks know how to speak to the value in a way that's going to sell to their peers, right?
Yeah.
Like that's it.
That's it. Simple. We just solved it.
Like it's hard.
Yeah. But it's true. And I think for certain businesses, you could see, like in the timeline of the business, go-to-market team grows, brings in a whole lot of people. CS team grows. Go-to-market team shrinks. CS team continues to grow. I mean, that's really what you could see with certain businesses, because of actually, quite frankly, the go-to-market team that should just be focused on go-to-market. And then after that, you should just be able to continue to grow using the network effect, using virality, and your existing customer base in order to do it. And obviously that massively shortens the pipeline as well. So do they really need to go to a BDM or an ST? No, they don't. They can just skip the front of the line and get them in and get them paying.
And also poor BDRs and BDMs these days, like they're really, that discipline's gotten real freaking hard. Thank God I didn't go into it. I feel for them. But to your point, it's also not as effective, even if you have the best BDRs, right? Like it's just tough going right now. Yeah. So that's a better entry point, obviously.
And what are most of them doing anyway? They're using referrals most of the time. They're using testimonials most of the time. They're using they're using whatever they can from existing customers most of the time, because of that gets better results, or content marketing, social selling, techniques like that. So they're not becoming, realist salesperson really these days is more of a creative agency, closer to marketing than actual sales. And they have to focus on building a relationship that lasts over a period of years. So they're somewhere between marketing and customer success, not sales these days. And obviously this is a blanket statement. That is not true for every industry, but for the vast majority of the tech industry, that's certainly the case,
And what's funny there is when you're talking about these techniques that are effective for BDRs, a lot of those are things that I try to bring into customer success. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So some of it is, I was speaking with a client last week, and they're like, hey, I just can't persuade my client to get this best practice put in. And I was like, well, why should they care? Like, what do you mean? I was like, well, what's the value to them? Not to you, to them. They're like, well, I had another team on it, and it's a lead acquisition company. They got 30% more leads. I'm like, well, tell them the freaking story and paint the picture of hey, someone who looks just like you, who was going after the same KPIs, right? They're measured on the same things. They were really struggling because the market's shit and leads are hard and blah, blah, blah. And here's what we did to help them. Here was the output. And now here's how they're spending their time, right? Just tell the story, do the social. The best way to sell in a best practice is by connecting that person's pain and need with someone who looks just like them. And it has to be true. I would never say lie and make this shit up. But often we have those stories. It's just about collecting them for the whole team to understand them and to know them and to call upon them in the right moment to be like, oh yeah, I had a client do this, right? That's the best way to sell, because you're not coming across as a salesperson, which we can talk about in a second. CS's idea of what sales is, but you're not coming across as a salesperson or self-interested. You're just educating them on I see a lot of clients just like you. That's why our business exists. So do you want to know what we're doing and what's been effective? Cool. I'll take you through it.
That's it. They're gonna trust people who are like them, not someone whose job it is to sell you on something, right? I mean, I'm gonna sound like a broken record when I say this, and listeners and watchers are probably gonna be sick and tired of hearing me say this every episode. But narrative is so fucking important. Just tell a story in everything we do. The most compelling way to get anyone's attention, to convey information, whatever it is, to build a relationship, you know, to make friends in an empty room, tell a story. You know, you could literally stand up in the middle of the street. If you start telling a story, people will stop and they'll listen. If it's compelling and it's got character arcs and it's got, you know, moments of struggle and pain and hardship and then wins, and, you know, if it's got some emotional traction to it, it goes up and down in some way. You know, even in that case of like, we had someone come to us, they had this issue, they were really struggling with it, but then it's like, oh no, like, you know, you've just got to capture people, you know, with emotions. That's all it is. That's how we're wired as human beings. You know?
I love this. And one of my advisors, he actually does narrative design. And the way that actually translates is he works with companies, startups, or corporations who either are designing out their brand or have lost their way and just diluted their brand and they don't even know what they stand for. And he really gets down to value. He distills it. He uses the language. I mean, the guy speaks 7 languages, so his brain is just structured in to figure out like how do we in the best way possible. And the cool thing is that narrative design, like marketing, is not really, I don't think, understood or respected in a way it should be. But at the end of the day, like, I can design the best customer success program and process, but if we aren't speaking to value in the right way and we don't have the right narrative, it's not going to be effective. Just like sales won't be effective unless we're speaking to the story and the value in the right way. Right. Yeah. And so for me, the work that he does, and when people get it, it's so foundational to every other output of the organization. But again, like marketing, most founders, when they have to make cuts, they cut the marketing team right away. Because people don't really understand what marketing should be or what it is or what it does. And so that's just I agree with you completely. Stories are the most important thing to get funding, to get clients, to retain clients, to get best practices in, right? Because again, we're human.
And beyond that, to just have friends, have meaningful relationships, like be liked at parties, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it goes beyond that. It's just being an interesting person. And like, to your point about the fact that your first client renewed with you because they liked you, like, there's being likable is massively underrated.
I agree.
Every aspect of life and business. Like, be likable first, and the best way to be likable is to know how to tell a compelling story and to actually give a shit about other people. Like, have empathy. Like, 2 things. That's all you need, and you'll be successful in pretty much anything that you decide to do in life, right?
And be authentic. And I think I was not likable as a kid. Like, I just didn't have a lot of friends. So I think I was just this weird, like, observer of how do people interact with each other successfully. Like, I was on the struggle bus over there. And for me, it is. I agree with you. It's that authenticity. It's genuine care and curiosity, and the ability to tell stories, right? To build rapport or to build excitement or interest. I totally agree.
And there's something to what you said there as well, being exploratory, right? Wanting to find it, just ask people about themselves, and, you know, be that detective that we talked about. You know what? There's a really good example, and I could go on about this for ages. And apologies if this is a bit of a nerdy thing, but I'm a big movie fan, right? I love movies, and Hollywood is a great example right now of how not to run a business. Right? If you ever wanted a best example to any of your clients, point to Hollywood, because they forgot that their #1 purpose is to tell a story. They forgot that. Instead, what they're doing is the equivalent of feature preaching, and now they've brought politics and, you know, telling people how to live their lives and what to think into the forefront of what they do, as opposed to being maybe taking a back seat. Like, you know, the moral of the story is up front, as opposed to in sacrifice of just telling a compelling story with compelling characters and that sort of thing. So that's a good example. If you ever have any clients that are movie fans, just point them towards Hollywood.
I love that. And it's funny because I have this weird thing where I struggle to watch movies. But still for that long, I start to get nervous. I don't know I'm like so American that if I'm not productive in getting things off my list, I'm like uncomfortable. I'll
be honest, I don't think in the UK we consider that to be a particularly American trait. Out of all of the things that we consider, we're like, I think being loud is like right at the top.
Guilty.
Guilty. Yeah. Being loud, eating a lot, that's another one.
Hey now. I do love my food. Okay.
Yeah.
My Instagram is food because I'm serious. I really do want to be on Great British Bake Off as the first American. I don't care if I have to do a fake accent the whole time. I'll do what I got to do.
Can you do a British accent?
No, not while we're recording, but I'll do it.
Okay.
But I've been told it's a mixture of Australian and British, which is weird because when I try to do Australian, it's not at all. It's garbage. Anyway, so I really want to be on Great British Bake Off. So I'm literally curating my Instagram, which is private, my Instagram reels and grid to all be baked goods. So when the producers are scouting and they're trying to figure out whether to take me, they're going to be like, this girl has been baking for so many years. But it's to the point now where my aunt reaches out to me and she's like, I don't understand how you're fit. She's like, you
eat too many cakes.
She's like, why did you make a creme brulee cupcake and like mac and cheese this week? Yeah. I'm
creme brulee is my all-time favorite dessert.
Okay, well, can I show you? Do you want to see that?
Show me. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're gonna cupcake.
Yeah, creme brulee. Welcome to America, homie.
I forgot. You guys just like fuse everything together, don't you?
Yeah, it's the vibe. And you can make fun, but this was my first attempt. And no, when you make creme brulee cupcakes, don't put the cupcake paper on until after because you will char it, or at least I did. But we had
oh wow, it looks lovely.
Yeah, thank you so much. If you lied, I thank you for it.
No, that does. So what have you just essentially made a cupcake, a creme brulee, but just in the shape of a cupcake? Is it exactly the same?
No, I made a vanilla cupcake, and then I cored it, and then I made a pastry cream, put it on top, chilled it really well, put on sugar, brulee it, bing bang boom.
That's quite clever. That
it's really fun.
There's what are those Portuguese pastries called? They're like egg pastries.
Yeah.
Custard. It's like similar to that, but I suppose with a spongy kind of base, isn't it? Similar vibe.
That's right. And I will say so for me, the top was not all one crispy shell, but you did have most of the surface area with the crispy, so you did get the experience. The problem is when you're biting into a cupcake, you need it to not be one consistent thing or else it's going to go all over the place,
You see, now, in general, I think cupcakes are overrated.
I hate cupcakes, actually. It is my least favorite dessert. I'm an ice cream girl. Right. Cupcakes are trash, in my opinion.
I just love the fact we were talking about them for that long and then we're just like, both actually they're shit. But
actually, I really don't like them. They are literally built to dry out. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
I was challenged. So I have friends now that are like, oh, but you can't do this. I'm like, come at me, bro. So someone had a creme brulee cupcake and they were like, I bet you can't make one. I was like, oh, here it is.
Here it is, bitch. Yeah. It's right on the table. Walk away.
Yeah, I edited myself, so thank you for adding the end of what I did.
Hey, there's no need to censor yourself on this. But anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. But I'm glad we were able to talk about food for a second because that's a good topic. But yeah, look, I'm really glad that things are going well. What's next on the agenda? I mean, are you just going to continue to grow the business? You were talking about that you're currently thinking about how to scale the business. So what's that looking like? What's the plans there?
I would actually love to hear your opinion. So basically, I started out, got my first contract in the first few weeks from the COO I worked with, who now found his own company. And I have been building, I don't even have a website, by the way. Like, I've just been focusing on revenue and servicing my clients and all this stuff. So
I know I did actually try and find it because usually when at the beginning intro, I show someone's LinkedIn profile and then I show their website and I couldn't find one. I was like, oh, okay, fine. I'll just show the profile.
I'm a word of mouth business at this point because
right,
I'm practicing what we preached. And it's like, if I do a good enough job, people will refer in new clients, and that has
exactly. I didn't have a website for years. Yeah, same thing.
Oh, good. Okay, well, phew. I have a one pager. That's all to say. Where I'm at right now, I have been working more / the same as I did in my past W2 job, which is too much. 13 hours a day, and for a few weeks now. The good news is that obviously invoices are pretty healthy. The bad news is I'm tired. And I'm a control freak, and I'm very cognizant of the fact that this is my brand. This is me. I will always be the salesperson because the conversations I have are not sales conversations. I'm just asking people about their business, and I'm telling them anecdotes of what I've seen before, what I've done before, and that naturally and organically closes the sale. Okay. So I'm not going to have other people sell what I do because I'm selling me. The fear for lack of a better term, of having someone take over any part of servicing the client has been debilitating for me up until now, where I realize either I'm going to have to start turning away clients or raising my rates. And I don't really want to raise my rates because I want to keep a commercial structure that people can access me when they're pre-Series A. Like I have a few stage companies. So that's all to say where I'm at right now. I have a woman I've worked with in the past. She's brilliant. She knows the way my brain works, most importantly. And I'm trying to figure out what I can delegate to her that she has enough context from my pre-work and my data gathering, but she can take some of the execution off. And then eventually, if that works well, I'm hoping she could create templates that basically take the structure I have in my head and translate it to something more replicable. Because at the end of the day, if you think about customer success, there are often a few key areas that shit goes wrong. You could do it by life cycle. So normally it's onboarding, right? Like I know people who have written books about just onboarding itself because it is that marriage, the beginning of the marriage. Or it's value articulation / like value adoption, right? So you can go by life cycle. There's normally a few things that are typically wrong. Like I could do a top 5 for each and then how to fix them. It's all here though.
Yeah.
And so the struggle is I don't have time right now to take what's in here and be like, let me structure this out and do my top 5 and here's how we figure it out. I need time for that. And so we're trying it out because I can't do 13-hour days. I'm not going to be as sharp. I'm going to be tired. I don't want to, I also, part of my value is I bring energy and frankly act as a therapist for a lot of my founders. I'm not going to do that if I'm burning myself out.
Yeah.
And I also don't want to, I'm kind of sick of exemplifying that for people and them thinking that like, oh my God, the only way to be successful is to work that many hours. Like, no, it just means I'm not working as smart as I could be. And I do a lot of, this is like a very long tangent, but I do a lot of work on myself. I do lifting, I do therapy, I do all of these things so that I can show up and be present and be the best person that I can be. Working 13-hour days is not conducive in the long run to me being an effective leader, advisor, or person. And I don't want people to think that that's what it takes because it shouldn't. So that's all to say where I'm at right now is figuring out how can I scale this in a way that preserves the quality, the authenticity, and the impact that I've had so far.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe we should have a pro bono session aside from this this podcast, but to talk about it in a bit more detail. But like, if it makes you feel any better, I'm in a very similar position. I suppose the one key difference being, by the sounds of it, definitely don't have as much work as you have on, and certainly not with as many Series A companies as I would like. I definitely would like to work with more. And my outlet is definitely doing this, right? And so I say to myself, especially with newborn son and everything like that, like I'm not going to work more than I'll finish at 5:30, and I'm not going to there's occasions in the evenings I'll jump on and I'll edit and I'll do some things for clients, but generally speaking, I'm pretty strict with it as well. So I haven't got to that point, but I can definitely sympathize with a lot of the stuff you said there. Not knowing which part of the process to let go or hand over to someone else. It's all in your head. How can you give it to someone else in the first place? And then also, that you need to get it out on something that people can interact with, because that's the way that you can continue to scale the business. You need to replicate you somewhere else. But there's a big problem with that, which is, a big part of why your business is successful, same with me, is because it's you, and putting it out onto a platform or something like that, it removes that. So, is it the same thing? I actually had an idea recently, one of many, which I'm sure you can sympathize with, where I've been experimenting with, and if anyone else wants to do this, take it, including you, and play with it. But those old games where you could choose your own adventure?
Of course.
Right. There's a platform I found where you can build your choose your own adventure game. And you can embed different media in it and things like that. And I've been thinking of basically turning my entire process into a build your own adventure type style thing, because the biggest challenge I have with all of the things that you just mentioned is every person's situation is unique and different. And so just coming up with a list of like, you should do this and you should do this, it just doesn't work. And people lose that feeling of like, this doesn't feel bespoke. But if I could replicate at least part of the journey to begin with, in that format, not only would it still be fun and engaging, but then also, and they'll feel like, you know, they're taking part in something exciting still, maybe without having to speak with me, at least yet. But they'll then get the bespoke, you know, tailored feedback back. But the biggest part of that is just sitting down and finding the fucking time to do it. So, yeah. And also a lot of the stuff's instinctive, right? Like, you know, unless you're asked or presented with a very specific situation, you know, if someone was to sit down and say, right, reel off all the advice that you give to people, be like, well, I need a scenario.
Exactly. And I need their personality, and I need what they think. You know what I mean? Because it's like the way I give the same advice could be 18 different formats and methods.
Exactly.
On the human being, because I'm going to try to tailor it to what's going to be most effective for them to help them get to where they need to be in the easiest way possible.
And it could even be different. Like, do they have one CS agent or two? It could be massively different just because of that. Because it's like, okay, well, then you have a little bit more resources, which means we can try this, we can try that. It might even make the difference what age they are, what background they are. Like, do we know what competency level they have? Because I'm not going to suggest this thing if you don't have that competency there. We'll have to work a different way around to it.
You're so right. Well, the final piece for me is that has been really getting in my way is the way I start out every engagement now. It's not how I started, but what I found to be most effective. I ask to do data gathering, and I basically do interviews. I look at their internal processes, internal documents. I listen to call recordings, and that's my first thing. And I say, my deliverable is to tell you, based on the metrics you need to drive and what you're trying to do with your business, here are my top priorities as a customer success leader that I would do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many there are. And if you agree with them, cool. And if you don't, we don't have to work together. Like, all good. Hasn't happened yet, but we do that. And the problem in terms of making this replicable is that when I'm interviewing people, I send a script ahead of time of like, here are the key questions, basic questions, but based on reading their body language, based on when I feel like they're holding back something, right? That's when I double down. And every single time that I do that, or I listen to something that could be a big deal and I ask a second question, that's when I unlock the opportunity. So it's like, I can't F up those interviews. And this woman I'm working with has done interviews in the past. It's not like she doesn't have experience. It's just, she's not me. And she didn't do this for 15 years, and she hasn't led the teams that I've led. And so it's like, it's the trust thing. And it's that I'm terrified. So that's another piece. I at this point, I'm not willing to try to scale that part out because it is so core to my understanding of the business and the strategy and all of that.
There's a lot of freestyling that happens, right?
Yeah. So,
but then, like, so let me pose a question to you, which I guess is the whole point of this and my job. But I said that like it was an unusual thing. I hope you don't mind me asking you a question. But like, so if you were consulting yourself, how would you approach it? What advice would you give for this particular?
I would definitely say you need to document success, and you need to document the process to getting to success. And so it actually, I wouldn't say start with the interviews. I would say start with what is replicable, what are the things what are the deliverables, and what are the consistencies between the deliverables you've done, and how can you really make a playbook around how to create that, right?
Right.
Where it's still a lot for the snowflake-ish nature or the unique parts of every single person's business, person being my client, but it still has that same approach. Because I probably do have I know there are similarities in what I look at and what I look for to consult on, right?
Yeah, but there is just nuance. But there is definitely probably a framework in there. Well, there is a framework in there for sure, right?
And it's always like language. How are we using language? What is value? Where's the drop off? What's a more efficient way to get past this thing? What's something we could do earlier in the process to hold us back from hitting this obstacle, or keep us from hitting this obstacle? Those are all the things I do. There's just room for nuance.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the pieces of advice I give to most founders I work with, when especially early stage, or any stage really, is document everything you do. And that sounds like a bit of a daunting task at first. And I say, well, actually, there's a really simple way of doing this. Just have get an app on your phone or a Google Doc, and just basically make it your diary, right? Anything that's happened either throughout the day, when you're having a lunch break or whatever, just type in some short thoughts about that. The challenge that you overcome, how did you overcome it? Anything like that happens. And what you'll eventually find is over time, you can use, word searches to pull out certain things, and start compiling it into the beginning of your sales playbook, your commercial strategy, your marketing playbook. Like everything can be based off that, like early on when you don't have anything, because that's the foundations of it. It could just be your general thoughts. It could be a lot of nonsense, and it could just be therapeutic. But the point is, actually, you'll probably have quite a lot of genius thoughts there, especially if you're like me, 2 a.m, an idea strikes you. You can just pull out your phone, add to that Google Doc. Like it's all there. It's all in one place. It's messy at first, and later it gets sorted. And I think the problem is a lot of the time we expect it to be structured straight away. And just like starting a business, your ideas aren't always structured to begin with. So it needs to start somewhere. So if it is just a mess of a document, fine. You can always structure it later. Get an intern to structure it. Like, fuck it, it doesn't matter. Like there's a way of sorting it out later. But the first process is actually structure, is putting it down, right?
I like that. Messy at first. I feel like that's going to be my autobiography's title.
Messy at first. Mine would just be messy for life, because I'm far better at giving advice than actually doing any of it, right?
It is funny because like I have advisors who are phenomenal at certain things, and then for their own business, they struggle with it, right? Like it's just like you said, if you were consulting yourself, what would you do? It's like, what? That's such an interesting part of the human experience of you can be really good at helping people or coaching people with time management. Like when you were saying mark it all down, I used to coach CSMs because prioritization is a classic issue with a lot of customer success managers of there's never enough time. How do I know I'm prioritizing the right things? And so I would coach them on like, okay, put it in your calendar at the end of the day. Look at like, what could you have done differently, or what should you have done, or what didn't you do, or what, what shouldn't you have done that wasted a lot of your time. But doing it myself is tough.
Yeah. That's why what we do, I think, is so valuable to people, because quite often the vast majority of the feedback I get at the end of the sessions I do, especially the pro bono sessions, is like, so like, that was so obvious. Like it was right there in front of me. Like, thank you for just clarifying it. Now I can see, because if you've got so many plates that you're spinning, sometimes you just can't see the forest for the trees.
You have to, and with large consulting firms, I've seen them waste a lot of money from some of my corporate clients back in the day. But I do think that the value of a consultant is coming in from that higher level and not allowing ourselves to get dragged into the weeds.
Yeah.
Because like I have a CEO, he's new. He's 6-ish months into the role, and he's been dragged into the weeds. Yeah. And so when I was telling him like, hey, here's the smoking gun in your business and here are the basics, he's like, ooh, that makes a lot of sense. He was like, why is it taking me so long to see this? I was like, cause you're in the weeds. That's why I'm here, because I'm going to help pull you up and be like, hey man, we gotta look over there. Like this weeded area, this swamp isn't the actual problem.
Yeah, it's wasting your time over here. You're being distracted. Another, at the risk of saying another thing that viewers are going to have heard me say it countless times before, I think another really important reason why we are valuable as advisors and consultants is because we have no incentive to say anything either way, right? We don't give a shit, like for the most part, right? If you get rid of me because you disagree with something I say, I don't give a shit. I'm going to find someone else to work with, right? So my incentive is just to be honest and to call things how I see them, because that's going to help me do my job. Whereas unfortunately in a salaried role, so in the business that we're consulting, no one is incentivized to say what they actually think. No one. And I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. You can think you've built the most transparent, best culture in the world. Sorry to inform you, no one is going to actually tell you the truth. No one. Because they will risk losing their job. And that's the way it is.
So I mostly agree. I will say, in my former job, I did have people who knew I actually needed that. And my biggest fear was not knowing, like, I heard a woman speak who said she used to run enablement for restaurants at the beginning of her career. And after the enablement session, she'd go in the bathroom and she'd sit in the stall and she'd wait to hear people come in and talk shit about her. So she knew what could she do better next time, because she knew she wasn't going to get it directly. So my thing that I always think about since that is like, when people were talking shit, what were they saying?
Yeah.
And could I guess what they were saying so that I could fix it? It's hard though as a leader, because hopefully you have a few people you can trust who will be like, yo, you really messed up, or like, hey, this doesn't make any sense, right? Like that's the gold standard for me. And I did have that with a few relationships. But if you don't, sometimes it's just hard to know where to go as a leader. because you don't have any of that information. So I agree. I think as a consultant, the job is to bring some of those harsh truths to light.
Sometimes, yeah.
I will say,
or even something like, not just thinking about individual criticisms necessarily, but like, strategy criticism, or just, or not really believing in a project, like things like that. Because if you hand a project over to a team and as they start working on it, they go, wait a minute, this project doesn't quite make any sense. We're gonna fuck this up if we do this and this and this and this. But the whole reason why they all got a job and they're taking home a salary is because of that project.
Yeah.
None of them are going to put their hands up and say this project is worthless, right? So, and that's the problem with the working environment in being able to get truth. That's kind of my point. It's beyond just actually, I disagree with your position, because there are plenty of jobs that have created, that atmosphere where people are openly allowed to voice their opinions. But there is a layer beneath that, which is, I shouldn't be working on this. I shouldn't even be here. My job is redundant. Like, this is the wrong direction. No one's going to want to openly admit that.
Unless they hate it. So my favorite was when I could see the switch of people who, and I normally knew ahead of time, but like if they were thinking of leaving,
right? Yeah,
you don't give a shit anymore, and that's when you get the best feedback and direction, because they're like, I'm about to give notice. Like, I'll tell you exactly what I'm thinking. That is the most useful, and I think a lot of people dismiss it or discount it because they're like, they're not invested anymore. It's like, no, dude, their barriers are gone, their filters are gone. Listen. Listen to what they have to say, because I guarantee other people on the team are thinking the same things.
That's why exit interviews are so fucking valuable. Like,
yeah. Oh, I used to tell my team, like, hey, let it out in that exit interview. Like, that thing you complained to me about, say it.
Yeah. As long as it's constructive, right? And it's not just like throwing shit at each other. But even then, sometimes that's a bit healthy to just get out any gripes. I think officers should do arranged boxing matches just to get all the beef squashed, You know
what we actually did? We did, this wasn't with someone I disliked.
Sorry, my chair keeps going down. I'm not actually this short.
I actually did. Do you know what Hot Ones is on YouTube?
Yes. I love Hot Ones.
We did Hot Ones. It was
awesome.
And another member of the executive team. And it was so fun.
Yeah.
It was really effective with our team, because they got to submit the questions, and I didn't know the questions ahead of time, so they asked some really spicy ones. And B, it was just a humbling moment of like, we are real people. And I think as a leader, when I was developing my leadership style, I was always I like hate this lingo. I was human first, because at the end of the day, like, none of my work, none of my companies have ever saved lives. Okay. Like, I'm not taking myself that seriously. When I'm dying, I'm going to be thinking of the people who I gave a shit about, and I'm not going to be thinking about like my freaking renewal rates, even though they're shit hot. Okay. Like, so people knew that, like, you could be real with me. I also headed the mental health and wellness employee resource group as the executive sponsor, because that was to me as well. I'll tell you a story about that. Actually, it's pretty cool. So I was like always a human first, because to me, if you think strategically about being a leader and you need to keep people there, if you understand them as a human and you know them well enough to know that when their shifts are happening, there's probably something going on outside of work, right? Even if you're trying to mask it, they're going to be loyal to you, right? And so the more you get that loyalty, the more you get more knowledge preserved, and the more output you get, because they actually like you. So I led in a style that was very different from any style that I had been led, outside of my biggest mentor, who's someone I reported to for 6 years out of my career. And she's just an incredible human. So I learned some of it from her, but human first, it's overlooked. And
it is.
Yeah. And
and like to our point earlier about how to approach the customer interaction, like if that's just an approach you take in general, you'll generally be okay. Like I'm going out to lunch tomorrow with my old sales team that I used to lead. I haven't worked with them for 7 years. And we're going out for lunch tomorrow. It's just the four of us, the original team. The team's since got bigger, and I don't know any of them.
Of course,
so it's just that. Like, don't invite those guys. I don't fucking know who they are. Like, it's the boys. It's the original crew. We're the ones going out. Like, we're the ones that built that company. So it's like, the first four. So it's like, we'll go out for lunch. Like that's that. I think it should be a sign of something.
100%. 100%. If people care enough to stay in touch, which is hard, but for me, it's like, not to get existential or philosophical, but it's like we have such little time on this planet. In my opinion, the human experience is all about learning from each other and like helping each other grow. And whether that's for 1 minute, right, that you're sharing an interaction, or it's for years, like treasure it and support and amplify each other in any way you can. And like, it's just always, I've never felt anything other than happy when I got a reach out from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. You know, I'd be like, oh God, that was so nice. Like I loved going on that sales meeting with that person. You know, there's like, it's just beautiful. So that's all to say, just be a good fucking human.
Yeah, it doesn't cost much. Like it reminds me of something I always tell my son, which is again, to get a bit philosophical, but I always tell my son, you know, when he's unsure about things and stuff, I'm like, buddy, what is your job on this earth? What is it you're meant to be doing? And he knows the answer now, but I taught him it's to learn.
Oh, I love that.
Like, okay, what is my job on this earth? To learn. What is everyone's job on this earth? To learn. And how do we do that? By listening to what other people have to say. Right. So next time your teacher asks you to sit the fuck up, you sit the fuck up. That's how every conversation usually goes. Right? When she asks you to stop mucking around. Or if he's getting frustrated with something or whatever, you know, it's a good fallback. It's like, you know, you want to know what the purpose is of things. That's it. Learn.
And actually, I want to stay on this because for me, there are a lot of people who at one point just kind of tune out and stop learning.
Yeah, definitely. I think they know everything.
You know, and so for me, there's like the growth mindset or whatever, but it's like, if you're not learning or growing, you're dying, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So part of my work has been when I recognize that shift in people where it just, you see it behind their eyes where they're just like not in it. I would try to figure out why. And like, how can I make it interesting? And can I make it interesting? And can I help them? Or are they going through some shit and they just don't have the emotional bandwidth or energy to learn or to apply themselves? Like,
I wonder if you get this from your family, you know, of teachers, because of, you know, the best teachers are the best students, you know, in the same way that the best scientists are the best researchers, right? You know, you never know everything, like in any particular subject or field. It's like, you know, the only way to be at the forefront of any particular field is to continue to learn about it.
Yeah.
The best doctors and surgeons in the world are constantly reading the newest research, and the best teachers are constantly learning about the new, you know, discoveries in history or learning about new languages or whatever it might be. Like, that's the only way you can stay relevant and feel relevant, which is really important too, because we need to feel like we've got continuous purpose. Totally. And so in order to feel that way, we need to stay relevant. And that's not an easy thing to do unless you just listen, you know?
Unless you listen and unless you really want to learn. I don't know. I think it's partially that. I think it's also just the world's so big, and I grew up in such a small place that I was acutely aware of how much was out there that I didn't know or I didn't experience. And I just wanted to experience more. And so I pushed myself. I hate change and I'm constantly changing. I pushed myself to just continuously go into uncomfortable situations so I could learn and grow.
What was the type of place you grew up in then?
So in the States, if you're from Michigan, which is in the Midwest, it's like a flyover state. So
I've got a client in Michigan.
Bless them. So bless them. So I have to show you my hand because Michigan looks like a hand. If you're looking at the map, it does, I swear to you. Okay. I'm from this tiny little town. It's called Northville, Michigan. And Northville, Michigan it basically has one intersection in the downtown of like little stores and little shops. It's a small suburban town, very boring, no diversity. When I was growing up, I mean, there's dirt roads like all over the place, but it is in the suburbs. So most people most of the families would be engineers who go to like Detroit and Dearborn and stuff to work on cars. And then they come back to their families in the suburbs. So just a very, very small place. There's like a Victorian clock, which is the gem of the downtown. It's like a big deal in Northville is the clock. So that's where I'm from. Very small.
I'm kind of picturing it in my mind, and like I said, I'm a movie fan, so I'm picturing like the traditional like the sort of town where the monsters escape, and like, you know what I mean, like that kind of like Gremlins, you know, or something like that. That's what I'm picturing in my head.
It's like it's kind of like on, I think Gilmore Girls was you get that feel for like the small town little stuff, or like Hallmark movies or not that, I mean, I don't know if you watch Hallmark movies when you say
I don't. No, I watch real movies.
Yeah, okay, sure. So we just stayed a Hallmark, dude. They were just they started making work.
Actually, I'm not getting sponsored by them anytime I can see them.
But Hallmark actually literally it was the office right next to mine in my Series A startup when we
opened
in New York, and they decorated the entire office building for Christmas.
A friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, subscribe for more, and join the conversation in the comments. It really helps us out. Thank you.
Because Christmas is like their, blockbuster time of year. So you would walk in and it was this Christmas spectacular in the lobby of the building. And then you would go up to our floor and it was just so beautiful. And it was because of Hallmark. Okay. So shout out to Hallmark. Anyway,
right, fair enough.
Very small, very cute. We have a Victorian village that we preserved because it was founded in the 1800s. And so it's all these little Victorian houses. And then when the kids are in the 3rd grade, you get Victorian days where you dress up in a Victorian dress that your mom sews and you go to school in Victorian fashion. Like, that is where I'm from. It's very small. It's very same, vanilla. And so I wanted to get the hell out of there.
Fair enough. And do you still go back there and visit?
Oh, yeah. So I had a whole Wizard of Oz Dorothy moment where I grew up in that Northville. I went to school in state because obviously college is so expensive here. I had to go in state because it's way cheaper and I got more scholarships and all of that stuff. Then I worked so I grew up here. I went to school here. I'm moving across the state. Then I went to work in Kellogg World headquarters. Then I went to Chicago. Then I went to Tel Aviv. Then I went to New York. And then COVID hit. And I basically ripped my life down to the studs. And I went back to Michigan. And I totally rebuilt my life and came back to myself and did a lot of reflection and investment and got physically healthy and did therapy and all of that stuff. So I went back. And it's beautiful. It's stunningly beautiful. I have a dog, it was easy. And then when the world started opening up again, I remembered why I left. And the reason I left is despite having an amazing family who I'm obsessed with, I need more. And the way I'm wired, I don't see myself living in a neighborhood, with like this quiet life. I just need more. I need access. I need to go out with folks who are really career driven and, a psychopath like me in that respect.
Yeah.
And have different viewpoints and can voice different experiences, right? Like I just don't want to be one of the same, in short. So I moved to Chicago once the world opened back up, and I moved back here because it's the largest big city in the Midwest, close to Michigan. That's like worth going to, frankly. It's actually kind of like London in terms of mixture of city and nature. It has a better proportion than New York had of nature. So for example, I can see Lake Michigan from my house. I can go to the lake. I take my dog to the beach. I am overlooking trees. I'm in a city. It's just balance. And so for me, when I was rebuilding my life, I needed more balance. And I also needed to go to a place that while there are more career-minded people, it's not New York, in that New York is the only part of your identity people give a shit about is what you do and how much you make, to be honest.
Right.
Like how much you can drink. And I don't really drink much anymore. I am more than just what I do professionally, as we're obviously covering. But Chicago was balance. And Chicago is just one of those places that feels like home. So I did a full circle. I went back to Michigan, and it really helped me kind of heal and rebuild and build a healthy lifestyle for myself. And then I just chose Chicago, where I fit a little better.
Did you know anyone in Chicago when you moved there, or was it just like a completely blank slate?
So when I was 22, I did not know anyone in Chicago. And I don't know why I do this to myself, but I did that. I knew one person when I moved to Tel Aviv, and I knew a few people when I moved to New York, and they were my coworkers. So I have injected myself into situations. And, when I was 22, I was in a work training, and I was sitting next to this guy. His name's Brett. He's still a great friend of mine. And in the work training, this is not, actually, I'll probably get canceled if I share this story. Long story short, I started teasing Brett because the instructor said something inappropriate to him, and I thought it was really funny. And so I started teasing him about it. And we became friends, and then we wound up actually like being roommates and having this great companionship and stuff.
Oh, awesome.
Built a couple friends from there. And then in Tel Aviv, I moved for love. So my now ex had had a network and I was introduced there, and then I made friends at work. And then when we moved to New York together, I made friends through work and all of that. So yeah, I've been in quite a few situations that I very much understood how difficult it is to make friendships as an adult, and how important it is to build a network of at least a few people that you can rely on, depend on, and speak to outside of work, so that you can have a more balanced and healthy lifestyle. It's hard, and it's hard now. When I moved back here, I was going to New York once a month because I was still working for my W-2 job, and I didn't invest in my network. And I have one friend I've known for 22 years at this point, so he's a bestie, obviously. But I didn't have that many friends. And I've really, since January, invested in building out my network professionally and personally, because at the end of the day, if you're a good human, you probably want to be around other good humans, right?
Right. How do you do the second one? I'm good at building out my network professionally. I suck at building out my network personally. How do you go about that? Because I need some advice.
Yeah. Oh my God. Come on over. So what I would say is, obviously, work friendships, when you know you have a good human that you interact with, I will, and maybe it sounds like I'm just comfortable sounding like a loser. I will literally say, like, you know what? I've gotten to a point in my life where, like, I don't have that many girlfriends in Chicago. I literally don't. I just made one last night, swear. And so I'll tell people, like, hey, I honestly am looking for friends and I'm having a really hard time because I work from home and, you know, my clients are all over. Do you know any good humans that, like, you think are friendly? Literally. Who's a good human? No, this is what I ask.
What you ask? All right,
whomever's opinion I respect, I say, who's a good human that you know? Can you introduce us? And then I literally, it's just like a professional networking thing. Hi, I'm Erin. I'm looking to make a personal friend. I don't give a shit what you do for work. I care about you as a human. Are you open to having dinner? Are you open to going for coffee? Are you open to going for a walk? Right? That's what I do. And then literally,
the problem for me is all my clients are outside of where I live.
Yeah.
So I don't have any clients locally to me because I live in Eastbourne. I'm like 2 hours away from London. Most of my clients in London are around the world. So I can't even ask my clients or people I work with.
Well, so then I'll do it based on a hobby, and you have to put yourself out there. So like, for example, now I'm making friends, which is great, or I go to the gym. How do I work with trainers and I bring them baked goods. So now they like me. So it's like, do I want them? Can I learn things from them? Can they be some of my friends? Or my advisor has a wife and a kid. I'm having them over for Friday because I'm Jewish. So I'm making Rosh Hashanah dinner. I'm like,
shalom.
Shalom. I'm like, can I bring them over for dinner and can I cook for them? Like, or go to a cooking class. Obviously, maybe you shouldn't because you're probably pretty fucking intense when it comes to cooking. But
like Gordon Ramsay.
I love G-Dog. I call him G-Dog. He's
G-Dog. Cool. Oh, you're good friends.
I'm best mates with him. But then for me, I also love board games because I'm a nerd. So it's like, go to a board game place and throw down competitively. You're either going to make or break any acquaintances there, right?
Yeah.
I almost lost two of my best friends in a game of Monopoly, but you better fucking believe I won it. Like, that's
probably not the best. Yeah, if you're really good at something, maybe probably not the best place to make new friends, right? You're just going to piss a lot of people off.
Or you're going to piss some people off. But the ones who aren't are going to be like, ooh, I see you. I like you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I actually did try something recently because I have been living in Eastbourne now for, it's got to be 10 plus years. Wow. And I don't really have any. I've got ex-colleagues, like I said, I'm going to lunch with them tomorrow. But like, I haven't spoken to them in months, and there's months and months we go back. It's not like we hang out or anything. And the one friend I did have in Eastbourne died, unfortunately, fairly recently, like a year or two ago. Just random heart attack at the age of like, what was he? He was in his late 20s. Just died of a heart attack. Just like, watching Iron Maiden at a festival. Died. And so random. And then another friend of mine, unfortunately, a few years back from back home, who we did see fairly frequently, he committed suicide. So in general, pretty, and he wouldn't mind me laughing about it because of he had a twisted sense of humor. So shit out of luck in that front. But and I did try something recently. I'm Jewish too by birth, but I'm not. But I'm not a practicing Jew.
Necklace, because I have a similar one.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah,
I saw
yeah,
it.
very nice.
Yeah.
But I'm not a practicing Jew, and to be completely honest, I'm an atheist, right? I don't believe in God,
Cool.
but I value the heritage greatly,
Yeah.
and have a huge amount of respect for it, just in the same way I do for anyone's religious ancestry or beliefs. And I thought, you know what? There's a local gathering that happens once every couple of months or once a month, which is like a liberal Jewish gathering essentially.
Sure.
And I messaged the guy who runs it. He's not a rabbi. He's just a he's from New York actually. He's originally a Jewish musician, and just has a lot of passion for his faith. And I messaged him. I was like, look, I'm not a God-fearing person. I don't believe in this, but I'm very interested, and I'm looking to put myself in situations to meet other people because I don't do that enough. Would you? I'm sorry if this offends you in any way that an atheist wants to essentially come, but I do have Jewish heritage and I respect it fully. And like, would that be okay? And he was like, absolutely, come along. So I went along. This was months ago now because it's very infrequent, and he leads a service and all that, and then they sort of have drink of the wine and all this sort of stuff, and read from the Torah and everything. But it's like 6 people. It's not huge, and majority of them are quite old, and lovely people. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like, do I see myself like interested? And also, it's like once sporadically. It's like once a month, twice in a quarter, that kind of thing. It's not regular. So I will be going again simply because they're lovely human beings, but it wasn't quite the opportunity to make new friends as I perhaps first expected.
One thing I wonder is, like, as a man, is it harder? Because for me, it's like, I'm just vulnerable, and I'm like, yo, I've moved a lot in my life. I'm a likable person. I am fun. I swear to God. And I have made friends in other places. So I'm not like, boring, but I don't have friends and I'm lonely and I need a girlfriend, or I need this type of friend. Is it harder as a man to like admit that?
So, I mean, I don't want to speak for all men and say like, yes, it's harder for men, but like, yes, it's harder for men.
Yeah,
because I think, it's very difficult for a man. Men judge other men quite harshly in terms of vulnerability. Like if and in fact more, or they can do, but not always. But I think more than that, like society judges men quite harshly based on any vulnerability, which is why we have such huge problems with suicide rates and so on, as my friend is a good example of. But more than that, it's kind of like, there's a certain amount of respect that men need to have for one another about certain things, and I feel like you can lose that if you're too vulnerable, Wow. And so you have to be careful. It's about finding a balance. I mean, it's the same with women and men. I don't care what women say, but like, and this might be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway, is no woman really wants to see their man cry, right? Like they say they want to see weakness, but actually there's something that can change in the way that you perceive a man if you see him being too vulnerable. Because quite often we, at least in most relationships, not all, the position of a man is to be a source of strength, of stability and consistency. And sometimes if you go over that boundary too much and show too much sensitivity, too much vulnerability, then you can change as in that person's eyes. As moving away from that, and the man doesn't want that, because we as men like that, and so that's why we tend not to want to be too vulnerable, because we want to be seen like that.
I totally get that, and that's something I gathered. And listen, I lived in the Middle East. Like, you want to tell me about men presenting themselves as just like tough? Right. I've seen that. My ex-husband was Middle Eastern, and I did see him cry a couple times. And for me, I never felt closer to him than
interesting. Yeah, but feeling closer and the opinion you have of him, like, I mean, and I'm not saying this was the case, and this doesn't happen all the time, but like, I feel like while you may feel closer, that the concern is, we can definitely get closer as a couple if I open up. Right. But then will I be viewed in the same way as being as strong as I was perceived before? Has the perception changed of me? And I think that's a concern, whether it's true or not. We have that concern, because out in the world, that certainly is the case. Yeah, out in the wild, right? You would have been killed if you showed that weakness, or you showed, right? Like, I think there's something, even like professionally, for example, like this happens all the time. Let's say, two people get called in to be told off at work.
Yeah.
You know, if a woman was to break down and cry over it and talk about how, you know, she's having troubles at home and she's finding things difficult, she'd probably get a lot of support and not be judged too harshly based on that. And I know this for a fact, 'cause I've seen it happen. If a man then goes through the same process, and if he was to burst out in tears, and I've been in this situation as well, burst out in tears because they're going through a difficult time, then you're no longer reliable. There's something wrong.
That's wild.
You know, you're unstable. There's something not right here.
And
because it's not acceptable. It's not professional.
And that's interesting because I would always go to the bathroom and cry.
Right.
I let people see me cry. Even before I was a leader, I was like, I'll be damned if they know that they got me. You know what I mean? And I cried. Like, my first job was horrible. It was rough. People were so mean, and I don't know who raised them. And I would cry in the bathroom stall. Like, it got to a point where it was almost every day.
Wow, that's awful.
Well, you know, shit happens and you get through it. But
and that's a very man response to that. It's just, oh well, you know, shit happens. I mean, that's what your friends will tell you if you're down the pub. You know, shit happens. Just carry on, crack on. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I let it out. I let myself feel those feelings, but like, you know, and then I changed my surroundings because I think that was a big piece of it. That's all to say. It's interesting. I'm thinking about the person I'm seeing now, and he's very strong. And this is me, sample size of 1. If I saw him cry, I would be like, oh my God, finally, he's like comfortable enough around me to do that. I might be, I'm sure I'm different. I'm a different kind of bird. I always have been. But
maybe a bit. I mean, like, I think maybe a lot of women would agree with you on that, like, to a degree. But I think it's just a risk for us. We feel like, because look, all men and women we've all been in shitty, toxic relationships before, and if you haven't, then you probably you're getting there, or you don't realize you're in one yet, right? And so like, and you know, in those relationships you can be made to feel like absolute shit just for having an opinion or a feeling. And you know, time and time again, as men, we sit around and talk about our relationships despite what people think. We do discuss these things, and we're repeatedly chastised for talking about our feelings, despite the fact that we've also repeatedly chastised for not talking about our feelings. And so it's like, well, what the fuck are we meant to do? So the best thing to do is just go, I don't have any feelings.
It is interesting, and this is the final piece. I love this. This is very personal, but my marriage ended because my ex stopped feeling like a man, and I was like, what does that even mean? And he was like, because my career accelerated faster than his, and so
interesting. We felt threatened by them.
He felt threatened, and I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, you know, who cares? I love you as a person, and that's why I'm with you. Like, I didn't marry you because you were X role at X position at X company. But he stopped feeling like the man. And so it was a lot of like, what does that even mean to you? And where did that come from? And how do you believe that? And how can we fix that? And all that stuff. And, you know, it was very sad to see feel that way. You know, when I was like, no, we're part of a team. It doesn't matter what we accomplish because we're like a unit. We do it together. So it was tough.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I'm sorry to hear that.
He's in a good place now, though, so we're happy. You know, we're both happy and amicable and respectful and all this good stuff like that. I can't imagine, because there is so much pressure. Again, like, you know, in this culture, who knows how people would feel about this, but there is a lot of pressure that men face, and obviously there's a shitload of pressure that women face, and like our is totally fucking different, especially in tech, which is something we all talk to each other about too. But I can't imagine not sharing the feelings. That's pretty fucking awful.
Yeah, it is. But it's just something that you learn to accept at quite a young age as a man, to be honest. Like, I saw a really interesting thing that's been doing the rounds on TikTok recently about from a couple of things, actually. There was a woman who transitioned to a man that was talking about, like, basically she wrote a book. I can't remember. I did write it down somewhere, but she wrote a book about it, about her experience as a man. And she I think she actually ended up committing suicide. And she found it to be the most horrendous, traumatizing experience that she's ever had in her life. And I think she was a journalist, and she was doing it. I think I might be conflating two stories. I think I recently saw one was about a woman who actually transitioned to be a man because that's what she, you know, because of her gender identity. And then she was pouring out about how difficult it was. And I think there was another person who was a journalist who, as an experiment, sort of presented as a man for a period of time in order to see how it worked. And I think that was the person that wrote the book. I think I'm confusing two stories. And she is the one, I think, that I believe committed suicide, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm terrible at remembering things like this. And I've heard apparently the book is infinitely fascinating because of the insight from a woman's perspective, with the assumptions. I think she was actually a feminist originally, a very, very extremely feminist originally, when she wanted to kind of prove that her theory was right, that men have it easier. And she found out we were so fucking wrong. Men have it so much harder than we realize.
That's fascinating. And it's because obviously my experience as a woman in tech, like I've been around men. Literally, I had to make girlfriends in Chicago because I work with men. I am around men. My clients are men. Like, I am and it's cool. I'm a homie. Like, I love hanging out with whomever. It doesn't really matter. But I was like, gosh, I need a girlfriend because, like, I want to talk about stuff and I want to talk about feelings. And this person works in the finance world, so she also works predominantly around men. And it's just nice to have that place of vulnerability. What's interesting is, from my perspective, it's like the men stick together, and the men there were so many countless times when I was in a room and I would say something, and then a dude would say literally the same thing I did, and all the men would react to him saying it. Right. And I'd be like, the fuck, bro? I just said that. So it's the human experience, man. It's nuanced, huh?
I think the biggest problem is just we always think the grass is greener. Yeah. Whether you're black, you think white people have it easier. Whether you're a woman, you think men have it easier. Whether it doesn't matter. I think people always think people have it easier on the other side. And the truth is, being a human is just fucking hard. It doesn't matter what skin color you are. It doesn't matter what genitals you have. It really doesn't fucking matter. The fact is, we've all been thrown into a different situation. Some people grow up in much harder situations than we do. And it seems like in the Western world, especially, we're so free of a lot of the worries that the vast majority of the human population have, by the way, which we tend to fucking forget about, that we completely decide to make up our own drama. And we have to do that based on something. And it has to be about gender identity or race or religion. And we just make up this drama. I'm not a fan of any kind of identity politics, whether it's male, female, black, white, whatever, gay, straight. It's just like, dude, just connect to that person for who they are, and don't assume that they've got it better or worse off than you, because that's not going to help you. You're just putting yourself as a victim there, and that doesn't drive anything. Just focus on what you can do, because actually you can do a lot more than you realize. And if you're going into that situation expecting to fail because you are whatever, you probably will, because that's the nature. That's you're manifesting the things around you, right? So
I think one thing you mentioned I observed in high school, and so Northville, tiny town, most of the kids were pretty wealthy because their parents worked for these auto companies and were executives and all this shit. Okay, I was not. I drove a purple station wagon that was 11 years old. It was called the Barney Mobile. It had rust on it. I parked it between a Hummer and a BMW that these 16 had. I worked 2 part-time jobs and I made $5.15 an hour because it was minimum wage. Like, I was not living the experience that most of these kids in high school did. And I watched these kids who were given the world on, again, in my perspective, a silver platter, literally create problems for themselves. And like, one girl just started doing drugs because and I don't know what her home life was. I assume it wasn't the most happy, but I just watched these people like throw shit away or create drama because they were so bored. And I was like scrapping for stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I was saving up for a Hollister t-shirt at the time. Okay. Like, this is, and it was just, I did see people, when they reach a level of boredom, create problems for themselves. And I think that was something that stuck with me, and also, frankly, made me terrified to ever have kids. But we don't have time for that. But I
do it.
I have a dog. I'm good.
That's enough. I've got a dog and kids. I can safely say dog's far more fucking rewarding. I'm joking. I'm joking.
I love kids, but I watch people create problems for themselves. So that's all to say, like, I'm not a political person because I don't have the energy. Yeah. Like, I hate to say it, I just don't, man. I'm just trying to like do good, treat people well, be a good example for myself of what I represent to other people, be cognizant of that, and like keep myself healthy. That's all I'm trying to do. And when people are like, what are your aspirations for your business? Do you want to make it $1 trillion? No, I want to do good work with good humans I know I can trust inside and outside of work. It doesn't matter. And I want to help people fix their businesses and like bypass the scar tissue I got. You know what I mean? Like, simple. And like, I have a beautiful home and all this stuff. Great. But like, simple. I want it to be simple.
And that's the problem with politics. It's a business in of itself. So people have their own interests in why they want to do these things because they have a business built around it, or, you know, it serves their own self-interest. But I think the biggest issue there with like those kids that you were talking about is lack of perspective.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a problem we all have because we all lack a lot of perspectives. You know, that's why, like I always say, be a student. Your job is to learn, because actually, you know, if you go to the majority of the countries outside of the UK, you know, Europe, America, which is the majority of the world, by the way, the problems that we talk about are not the problems that they talk about.
Totally.
It's like fucking perspective, man. Like, you know, it's easy to look at someone doing better than you and make a false equivalency to the reason why they're doing better than you is because of the differences between you. That's a false equivalency. That you should, you know, the most obvious, and we work through the most obvious differences first, right? So we look at them and we make an assessment, and it's like, okay, do they look like me? No. Why do they not look like me? Because of this, this, and this. And that's the conclusion we make. And it's like, well, wait a minute. That has completely ignored the 25, 30, 40, whatever years of their life that has led them to this thing. There's a lot of shit happens in a life that can lead them to the position that they're in. Like, that is what you should be actually comparing with. What was their education? What was their experience? What were the people that they, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot more to it than that.
I think I mostly agree. What I will say though is access. So like, I read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and have you read it?
I have not. No.
Oh my God. This is like, these are the 2 books I've read. Just like, I am not this booky girl. Like, I read fiction. But like,
I get recommended books all the time. I need to read more.
I actually liked Outliers because Malcolm broke down. He was like, okay, you see these American stories of these people who, like, you know, were just prodigies, and like Bill Gates, right? Like Bill Gates, and he's great and he's awesome and he's done all this stuff, but it all comes down to access. Bill Gates was part of a suburb in Seattle that had one of the first access to computing systems. So he got reps in, he got time in because he had access to these very expensive computing systems that other people didn't. And so the fact that it takes like 10,000 hours to become a master at something. The fact that he was able to get in those 10,000 hours before anyone else all comes down to access. And obviously it's also discipline, it's drive, it's interest. Of course, there's more to the story. That's one thing that I am cognizant of, though, is like, as I talk about my own career, and God knows I'm not Bill Gates, I've had access. I accessed corporate America easier. I accessed C-suites, and frankly, I code switched, right? Like, I hid my body. So it wasn't, obviously people could tell I'm a girl, but like, you know, I didn't want that to be the focus. I aged myself. I would literally put on makeup because I was in my early 20s talking to C-suite and I knew they weren't going to trust me. So I put on powder, and there's a specific technique called baking you can do, and it showed more of the lines around my eyes. So I looked a little more aged. Really? Wow. Yeah. Like, because the first time I did, they looked at me like I was a kid. And guess what? I was a kid who actually knew my shit, but they just saw me as a kid. So I could. So anyway, access is one thing that I will say, and I will agree to perspective. I'm going to tell you a story. So I was driving a coworker home of mine when I was in Tel Aviv, and she was really just, we were just talking about her background and like, you know, when did your family come to Israel? Because that's like a classic question, you know, at what point in history did your family flee? And she said, well, you know, my grandma came here during World War II, and she started working, and she had a few siblings, and she could only afford to save one. And I'm just quiet. Like, did she really? And I was like, what? Like, you know, my grandma worked really hard and she only had enough money to save one of her siblings. And I just go, holy shit. Like, how'd she make that decision, and who'd she pick, and, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, the gravity of that moment will always stay with me. Perspective, man. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
I work so I can get my dog like freeze-dried food, and someone else was working so she could save one of her fucking siblings. Excuse my French, but like,
yeah, no, go for it. No, yeah, exactly, and that's the point. It's like there's it's so many of the things that we concern ourselves with are entirely insignificant. I mean, if you really wanted to take it to the extreme, everything is, and that's where the nihilism comes in and so on. But I don't prescribe to that as a perspective. I actually think it should be the other way around, because if the things are so astronomical, the odds of being alive are just astronomical and all that. So it's held as something extraordinarily valuable. But that's a whole other discussion and very philosophical and whatever. But like, yeah, absolutely, and the other thing as well is, like, just to your point about opportunity, right, that you mentioned there. Yes, that is the case, and I think it's very easy to be jealous of people's opportunity, but that's focusing on the wrong thing. In the same way that you said, like, I've had opportunity, we all have opportunity, but it varies to degrees. But it's about whether or not you have opportunity. It's about what you do with it. And it's also, everyone has the power to create opportunity, which I think people forget about. It's like, oh, well, that person was born into a rich family, and so they had the seed money to start whatever business they want. Their dad just bought them any business. Okay, fine. That was their journey. What the fuck are you going to do about it? Isn't that more important? Like than just sitting on the sidelines feeling shit about the fact that this person has an advantage for whatever reason, because of money or their gender or whatever. It's like, and look, I get that everyone has a plight, and certain people are prejudiced against because of course, absolutely, and that's part of the human condition, and it's shitty. But what are you going to do about it? Like, that's what it ultimately comes down to me.
Have you heard Alex Hormozi's? Do you listen to other podcasts? Should I ask this as you're shooting a podcast?
I don't know.
Okay. All right, I love this.
Not anymore, but I used to a lot. But I don't have the time because I make my own. I spend my time either recording them or editing them, or you know what I mean. So it's like I don't have the time anymore.
I respect it. Yeah. So Alex Hormozi has a podcast called The Game. Alex Hormozi was a consultant. He bought a gym, he grew it, and then he wound up making a business of helping people turn around their gyms. And now he actually owns acquisition.com, which is a multi-million-dollar portfolio of companies where he helps them go from like 10 million to whatever. Cool. Mm-hmm. One of his things that he says is, you can only control your actions. So he's like, so if your business is failing or your business isn't working, what are you doing about it? Are you going to sit there? Or are you going to double down on getting more leads in your pipeline? Because like sales is a math problem often, right? Like, figure out all the different ways to make leads. He just released a book about all the different ways to make leads. It's called $100 million leads, whatever. Anyway, I like what he says, because it's like, in moments where I'm scaling my business, which is a great problem to have, and I'm so blessed to have it, right? And I work to have it, but like, cool. I can either just be overwhelmed, or I can be like, okay, I'm going to do more. And I'm going to figure out how to hire a subcontractor, and here are the things that I can do. And yes, I need my advisors to sometimes tell me and take me out of the weeds and be like, girl, you got to think about this, right? Mm-hmm. Owning it and controlling it. Right. And basically what he says is, if you are doing so many actions that it is statistically improbable that you will fail, right? Like, if you were continuously working on leads and doing more lead sourcing and all of that, like, if you make it statistically improbable that you will fail, and it is less likely that you're going to fail. So that's what I was hearing in yours, is like, what are you doing with it? How are you controlling it? How are you getting yourself up, right? To get to the point where you can focus on leads, or just
exactly. Because the reality is, there's a lot of things that occur over a lifespan that can knock you down and push you down. And if every time that's the case, you're just accepting the foot on your neck, as opposed to using that as leverage to pick yourself back up again, then and it's very easy to turn the energy, the negative energy you get thrown at you, or your perception a lot of the time of what you believe to be negative energy thrown your way, to turn it around as a motivational force.
That's what I do.
But you don't do that if you see yourself as a victim, because victims don't behave that way. That it is the other way around. You need to be pushed down on the neck in order to justify your existence as a victim. So it doesn't help anyone. You've just got to push forward. I don't know. I've got I'm quite opinionated on this, as you can tell. But like, and I know it's not always that simple for everyone. There are a lot of people who are very, very oppressed, and they that
was the piece that for me.
Very different. It's a very different scenario. I'm talking about. The Western world, the majority of us, we've got pretty good fucking lives. Yeah. So let's stop moaning and just get on with it. Yeah. And more importantly, get on with each other.
Yeah, I like that. that.
I don't know. But I just realized the time, which is nuts. I don't know where that 2 hours has gone, as always. look, listen, I usually like to end with something, which is to ask my guests to kind of reel off maybe some tips to the founders and entrepreneurs listening, which is the majority of the people who are listening to this, on sort of how to, what have you learned by starting your own business and so on. I would like to do a little bit different, actually, because we've kind of talked on that already a little bit. And if you wouldn't mind indulging me for a couple more minutes, what advice would you give to businesses looking to improve their customer success functions in their business specifically? Because I think that is maybe more appropriate. And if you do have any other business actual tips on running your own business too, by all means, throw them in if you feel up to it.
I mean, honestly, run a business by being a good human and being honest. That's like one. If you want to fix your customer success program, ask the people on the ground. Right. Help them understand what success looks like. So ask the right question, meaning, hey, if I wanted to keep 50% of your customers for 3 years, what do you think we should do? And then take a look at the life cycle and make sure that the language and the value you're using is consistent. So one of the first things I do when I'm consulting someone is I listen to their sales calls and then I listen to their kickoff. Do they use the same value points? Do they reiterate what they heard? Do they show that they give a shit about the human and they put in some prep time to at least say, hey, I saw that you went here, or I see that you've been at the company this long. How has it changed? Like ask some basic questions to show curiosity and to show that you gave a shit. And then take a look at the program. And really the ultimate question is, do you provide value to your customer every single time you reach out to them? Because if you're not giving them, and value can be different. It can be an insight. It can be guidance. It can be a heads up. It can be performance. But if you're not providing value, at some point you're conditioning the person to ignore you. So if you're a business, if you have cold customers, if you can't get a decision maker on the line, look backwards and see when's the last time you spoke to them and what did you talk about? Because you probably wasted their time. And anything else, call me, because I will Nancy Drew the shit out of your customer success program.
I like that. That's good. That's a little taster, but everything else, give you a call. You can sort it out. I mean, there you go. And then we've just now on record put the beginnings of your framework out there into the ether. So there you go. It made a start on that.
WhatsApp me and I want to help you make friends. So
okay. Cool. And I can give you some tips on the scaling side of things. That's what I do.
All right. I appreciate
it. Thanks. Yeah, no, likewise. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it. And I love doing this for these reasons, like just hearing people's stories and going off on tangents about stuff, which you seem to enjoy too. So that's perfect.
Tangents are where it's at for me.
Damn straight. That's where it is. Yeah.
I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise. Take care. We'll speak soon.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching and/or listening. Please like, subscribe and join the conversation in the comments below.